morning, everyone. I'm Professor Vivek Pomale from Science of Technology, Rajankonte, Bangalore, Department, working as Assistant Professor, Department of IS. In last video, we have discussed on some of the introduction part of the database management system and the properties. Today, we're going to see the concept of characteristics of the database approach. What is the characteristics of database approach? Why this the main database approach is used over file processing approach? Basically, we're going to discuss in this particular concept why the database is going to be advantage than the file processing approach. So there are four main advantages of using a database approach. That is self-describing nature of a database system. Second is the installation between programs and data abstraction. Third is support of multiple views of the data. Fourth one is sharing of data and multiple transaction processing. We're going to discuss one by one. First one, self-describing nature of the database system. This is the most fundamental characteristics of database approach is that the database system contains not only the database itself but also a complete definition or description of database structure and the construct. Not while we design a database, we are going to give the complete structure of the database. Complete structure in the sense we're going to give the what is the type of data we are storing to the database and what type of constraints we are adding to the database. All those things we're going to add in the while designing the database system. And all these structures like constraints and type of data and what are the description, the complete description of complete definition of the database is stored in the database management system catalog. All this will be the complete definition of the database is stored in the DBMS catalog. In this, what is the DBMS catalog? It contains the information such as the structure of each file, the type of storage format and of each data item, and various constraints on the data. Thus, information is stored in the catalog. That information is saved as a metadata. Whatever the information, whatever the definition or the related information of the database, we're going to store in the database catalog. That information is saved as the stored database in the catalog is saved as the metadata. The catalog is used by the DBMS software and also the database user who needs information about the database structure. If the user needs any information of the database, so if we enter into the database catalog or in the metadata, he can easily find out the what type of data and what type of constraints we added in the database. All those things we're going to find it. Right? The database management system software must work equally well with any number of database application. For example, at the moment, n number of many users can at a time they're going to use the application, right? For example, the Amazon application in all over the world in at a time made a thousand lakh of crores of people are going to use the application. So at a time it's going to open it should perform appropriate to all the users. And one more example to that is a university database or a banking database or a company database, as long as database definition is stored in the catalog. So this is the how the database, how the application or user is going to interact with the database. The user, what he will do, he will just a user or a programmer, he will interact with the database in the form of application programs or queries. Queries we have not yet started. So in upcoming classes, what is the query and how to write the query and all we're going to discuss in that. So user or application programmer, you're going to interact with the database system with the help of a program called as query. That query is going to send as a request to the DBMS software. Here, the queries which is sent by the user or the customer, it's going to process in the DBMS software. So software to process the queries and the program or programs. Here it's going to process and that processed query is going to send to the stored data. Software to access stored data. Stored data in the sense the data is there in this physical medium. In the storage part, the data is there. I want to retrieve the data. I want to retrieve the data. The data should be sent for the user as output. So this stored data, what you're going to do, whatever the request sent by the user program, the request is processed here in the DBMS software. The processed data, that executed data is going to retrieve the any information, whatever the information that query is demanding, that is going to be retrieved from here, and that information is sent to the user programmer. This is how the database is going to work. And second, insulation between programs and data extraction. Insulation between programs and data abstraction. In traditional file processing, the structure of data files is embedded in the application programmer. So any changes to the structure of a file may require changing all program that access that file. Here, in the traditional file processing, at one place we're going to store all the data. If you want to struct the data, if you want to find that any piece of information, any piece of data in one particular file, we need to search in all the files. And if you want to change any in the program, any in the file, that related change should be reflect in the other file also. Otherwise, it will be the data will be inconsistent. Then, by contrast, DBMS access program do not require such changes in most cases. In DBMS, we don't need that. If we change in at one place, automatically it's going to reflect to all other tables, to all related files. The structure of a data files is stored in the DBMS catalog separated from the access program. We call this property as a program data independency. Program data independency means here, if we change at one place, it's going to reflect at all other places, as I said now, right? So that the changing part in the changing part in the data in the program is not yet related. It is not related to the access program. So by this property we say it as a program data independency. Then support of multiple views of the data. Support of multiple views of the data, nothing but at a time a database typically has n number of users, right? So at one instance, many users are going to use the same application. So the same view is going to be viewed by many other people. The same data is going to be used by many other people. That is what the multiple view support of multiple views of the data. Next is what sharing of data and multi-user transaction processing. Sharing of data means you have a database. The database is going to be shared between the multiple users. The same data can be shared between the multiple users if that user is allowed for the other user to use his data. He should give the credential. You should give the authentication for the other user to use his data. Then only the other person can able to see the or use the data. Right. So in this Castle database, the main concept we're going to see is actor on the scene. Actor on the scene thing, but if you are designing any of the database, so who are all the person are going to work on this database while designing the database. The first person you're going to see is the database administrator. First, you're going to see the database administrator, right? Database administrator nothing but in any of the organization, one person will be there. The one person will be acting as the administrator. The main role of that administrator is he has the control over the database. So he is the only person who give the credential for the other users to use the database. For example, if you have a data business, all persons are not going to all users are not going to use the database in all ways. So if the administrator has used the privilege for one particular person, he can only read the data, means he can't write the data, he can't do any modification in the data. He can only see the data, he can only view the data. He don't have a permission to modify the data in the database. And if the administrator has given the permission for any other user to read and modify, he had the credential to modify the data in the present database, right? One of the best example is that in the college database only, the faculty can upload the student marks, can upload the student attendance, right? So, but student can view only the whatever the information, whatever the data the faculty has uh, uploaded in the database. He can't modify the data. He can't modify the marks. He can't modify the attendance, whatever the attendance or marks given by the faculty. It is what credential. The credential is what the faculty is. He can view the data, he can read the data, and he can write the data on the database. But the student doesn't have the credential. He can only read the data. These things are given by these credentials. These privileges are going to given by the database administrator. Next is and also the database administrator. He will assign the credentials like login passwords and the username and all he going to create for the users. And second comes to database designer. Database designer is responsible for designing the data. Design data in the sense database means how the data is going to be stored in the database and in what format the data is going to should store in the database. For example, if you want to store any phone number data means he will give the data type as number, right? Integer. If you want to store salary, he can give the number in the data type in the sense of float. So the final database design must be capable of supporting the requirement of all the user groups. All the user groups. How he has to design means whatever the client requirement. If the whatever the client has given the requirement, based on the requirement, the database designer is going to design. And third is the end users. End users are nothing but the people whose job is to assess the database for query. Means as a normal users, right? We are going to use the database so that we are going to interact with the database. So that we the end users, those who going to use the database. Those set as the end users. And last one is the system analyst and application programmer. System analyst means what? A database designer, he going to design the database. The system analyst, he going to analyze the database. Okay, and the database designer design a database. He's not going to code. He's not going to implement the database. To implement the database, we need a person called as application programmer. The role of application programmer is going to implement, going to write the code. Whatever the design done by the database designer, that is going to be implemented. It's going to work as an application that is going to be done by the application programmer. After the program is coded, implementation part is done. It's going to test if any bug is there. It's going to debug and documented that one and maintain the software. These are the people. These are the main roles of the people who go into while constructing or while designing